Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Professor Chetwyn, for introducing the topic. And let me go straight to introducing the speakers right here in front of us. First one, of course, Professor Chetwyn Chan, and Professor Paul Henstedt, Dr. Linda Bowman, Professor Edward Chan, Professor Gray Coulter-Lindgren of the University of Hong Kong,
Professor Mark Allen McGinney of Yingnan University, Professor Reza Hosman of Hong Kong Baptist University, Professor C.C. Zhang of Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. In addition, if you have any questions to ask the panelists throughout the discussions, please use the Q&A function, which are available at the conference website. You can simply scan the QR code printed on the last page of the program, and then you will get the website. You can simply select the appropriate section, then enter your questions, and remember to submit the question, and our administrators will handle it immediately and ask the panelists. Thank you. And Professor Chetwyn Chan, please start.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so we have a few mics here. As what I was told, there will be 4. So the panel members can just use the mic as you wish. There's no free lunch, so I would volunteer our overseas speaker to start the dialogue first. Now, because I'm right-handed, sorry, and I want to protect Linda here, so I now volunteer Paul to give the first remark, and then no free lunch applied to Linda. So you
I got a warning now.
Okay.
Yes. What purpose should GE serve in higher education in Hong Kong? I'm going to simply say that the major of the program, or whatever you choose to call it at your institution, the purpose that it serves is to provide students with a sense of depth and the nuance of knowledge and thinking. The purpose of general education is to provide them with the flexibility and the nimbleness of mind that they need to respond to complex problems in the world. The question is there added value of students are doing it both at the sub-degree level and at the undergraduate level? And the answer I'm going to give to that is absolutely there is. I think if we take the argument that you made earlier that it must begin in primary school, these are complex tasks that we're talking about here, and the kinds of synthesis and integration and problem solving that we want students to be capable of responding to when they move out into the world beyond the academy, that can't be taught in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. We need time to do it. So I think there's absolutely value to doing it at both levels. So how's that for an initial answer? Am I done now?
There will be more rounds, so don't worry. So Linda?
Thank you, and I will build on what you said, because I think it is really important to think about the value of having general education at the sub-degree level and then at the university. Because general education is, by definition, a broad look at how we look at the world and how we solve problems, having the opportunity at the sub-degree level to really study the breadth of what general education encompasses and what it means, what it can provide for the student, can be an advantage, perhaps in some way help to address what Professor Chan said about the program to program, department to department ability to decide whether or not they want articulation, whether or not they want transfer students. If the students coming from sub-degree programs really have already acquired that breadth of knowledge about general education, then upon transfer, the professors at the university can take them deeper into those subjects, and I think that that can be a really fruitful partnership.
So, is that on?
So maybe, is that Justin? That's right.
Yep.
I agree with what's been said. The phrase that I'm using at HKU is for student learning is creative transdisciplinary capacities. That's a lot of syllables, and I have to explain to people what I mean by that, but I really want students to get used to being flexible and adaptable and, as Paul said, nimble intellectually and able to do different kinds of research with different kind of outputs. We do that very differently in different courses, but right now I like the move from interdisciplinary to transdisciplinary for various reasons. And I think in terms of the sub-degree degree sector, yes, agreed. Best to do it everywhere. And for me, sitting on the last year of work with FSTE and advisory board at HKU Space, it's been very helpful to come to a better understanding of the organizational logistics on both sides. And I think that's something that we can just keep working at to do better over time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out that at HKBU, hello? Is it on now? At HKBU, we have been looking at this in a slightly different fashion. I think perhaps Professor Chen pointed out earlier how we want to make sure that our students are able to take all of those things that we are willing to give to them. Sadly, the biggest problem that we have is that it's a culture that really has been driven by examination to the point where they no longer are capable of looking at the value of GE as how it's supposed to be helping them in broadening their views and what the world is all about. They're mostly interested in terms of employability, but they do not understand that that employability, de facto, requires those soft skills, whether it's in terms of communication, the ability to be able to critically think, to be able to, I think help is very, very important. And I think our students are quite a bit helpless in this particular area. And I think it's our responsibility as educators to make certain that we continue to delve on issues of soft skills and the abilities that our students need. Of course, we need the help of our secondary schools. And this is where the part where universities, as well as the sub-degree programs, are having difficulties with, because students do come with a mindset that it takes probably a generation to change. But yet we are trying to go ahead and provide the kind of education for them in just 2 years or 4 years, depending on where you are. So that's the best piece that I could perhaps say, that we have been trying to do some of this thing, and it hasn't been as effective as we would like it to be. One point before I turn over the mic is that it was 4 years ago, I believe, when it came talk about the transfer of students coming in from sub-degree programs to the degree, and Simon was kind enough to invite me to give a workshop. At that stage, we were talking about how we can take courses that are in the sub-degree program, match it with the courses that we have at HKBU. We were doing that. We were providing workshops and seminars, saying to people that if you could put your courses together like this, it would make it easier for your students to transfer to us. Fortunately, we moved away from that into a block transfer, and in this particular case, at HKBU, we are allowing, out of the 38 credits, 27 credits to be transferred, and most likely a lot of students are happier with that possibility rather than the previous scenario where we had to do matching of course by course. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
I've been skipped, so maybe I can step in. All right, so in USD, I think the role of GE is very clear to us. It's actually hand in hand, go hand in hand with the major programs to create a whole person education. That has been very clear to us. So we are very STEM-oriented university, so we directly translate the whole persons to what we call ABC Life. But that creates some sort of trouble to us. Like A is academic, B is broad-based, C is competency, then life goal is like leadership, international visions, and then ethical standard visualizations and something like that. All right, so I think the lower part, you can see the lower part is actually more geared toward the attributes or soft skill. So that has been a very difficult area to address. And as a matter of fact, I think most of our faculty members, they are not ready for this. Most of our faculty members, they are actually very die-hard science-oriented faculty members. They believe in academics. They don't believe too much in soft skill, attribute-oriented educations. So I think the challenge for us, we have a very high goal set up, but the challenge for us is actually educating students as well as educating faculty members. I think faculty members probably should have a higher priority because once the faculty member are kind of aligned to what we are looking after, I think they probably can educate students much better than what we are doing now. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, CC. Edward?
Oh, okay. I think I've said enough this afternoon, but what I just want to add is really the challenge to the sub-degree sector in terms of the teaching of general education. I think for 4-year programs, there shouldn't be too much problem. The time constraint is a question. So you have only 2 years. How are you going to embed general education into, say, 30 credits? Now, usually you get 30 credits to graduate. Now take someone related to, or something related to Hong Kong U Space, our community college. We have 40% general skills, 20% general education, and 40% specialism. But there's no clear concept of what we mean by general skills and general education. So that's something I think the sub-degree sector should come together to define, general education more clearly. It's very important conceptually. It seems different sub-degree institutions doing something different. So SFTE would be the place where we have to define the objectives of general education and the contents of general education. And so that I would say general education shouldn't be, say, now is about 60% if you count the general skills. Only 40% is specialism or some concentration. So I would see this as a challenge, and we should have to arrive at some common ground. Then the reason for this challenge is also the secondary school system, the new secondary school system. Now it seems it's a very strange evolution of the system. During my times, it's really arts and science. I am old enough to tell you where we had to take about 10 to 11 subjects at Form 5. So it's really science and arts. Science and arts. You have to really read everything. But then later on, it's streaming into arts and sciences for the secondary school. Now then, the new system supposedly is to blend science and arts together since 2009. Right? But then the result, unfortunately, is the other way around. I understand most students will take, of course, English, Chinese, math, and general education, and plus 2 or 3 subjects. 2 or 3 subjects is concentrated either in arts or science. So you go back still to the specialization system, making tertiary education is very difficult in the sense to articulate them into your program because they come from different backgrounds. Again, it's not really the original idea of mixing arts and science. So my view is now the whole system, the different, what we call the different pieces of the education system, has to be looked at to see how they should be articulated or they should be stuck together. Like the high school, I'm really surprised that it defeats the original purpose of having arts and sciences. But then now is even narrower than before, making the life of the post-secondary institutions like even more difficult. So I hope there will be some common ground, common conceptualization that could become out with.
Thank you, Edward. I want to follow up with what Edward just said, is the conceptualization of general education. We're not talking about the rest of the world, we're talking about Hong Kong here. Now it appears to me that at the sub-degree level, general education, it seems, is a must that the students they need to take it. And after they take the general education, then when they get to further study, most probably they need to take it again. So the question is, which level, which institution, and which environment is the best for our students to uptake this general education? Would it be at a sub-degree level or the degree level? Or you say, well, no, both. But if we really want to make a choice, A or B, would it be better in terms of environment, support, the holistic education and all that, 2 years versus 4 years? Should it happen more appropriately at the sub-degree level or the degree level? Of course, a very weird scenario in Hong Kong is majority of the students at the sub-degree level, they want to articulate to a degree program, most probably senior year degree program, so it's 2+2. So that's a special case, but if it only can happen in one level, which level would provide more appropriate environment? Or you say, well, both levels actually they provide exactly the same environment, so both can do or should do a general education. So I'd like to show the question to the providers. Do we have providers here? Sub-degree providers on the panel? No. So Edward is, but he's too high level. So could we get some response from the audience? Yes, please. Should you want the mic? We should have one more.
It's okay. I'll shout.
Sorry.
Addressing your question just now, I think senior year students will having 2 years to complete their major, one of the subjects and majors, and in addition to that, service learning, internship, study abroad. It's very difficult to really squeeze in another level 1 or level 2 general education courses in that 2 year. Right? And back to the question of the role of GE. As a frontline teacher myself, I realized that sub-degree with that 2 years, right? It's very well to talk about the ideal of general education. We want to take them out of the comfort zone. We want to shock them. We want to take them to a high level. But sub-degree students, the purpose of completing 2 years is to articulate. It's grades. That's all they care about. And the worst thing is not just them. It's the people at the degree sector, right? The admission panel. All they care about is the number, is the grade, right? They will not. I mean, there's no such thing as like in the U.S. when you write a personal essay and out of the grades you get to know what kind of person is that. But in Hong Kong, especially for senior years, grades is all. It's everything. It's their life, right? So from the student point of view, they really don't want to take the risk to jeopardize their future by, indulging really way out kind of, weird kind of GE courses and all that. And even on the teacher side, right? Teachers do not want to take risks to push students out of the comfort zone because there's something known as a TE, right? They don't want to upset the students. And it takes a while for the students to buy in. And on top, and aside from the issue of student buy-in, we also have the issue of the parents not buying in. Why am I sending my kids to a 2-year program where they spend 60% of time studying something that has nothing to do with the future? I mean, this is something. It's easier said than done. So I was just wondering whether the panel have some advice for us frontliners to deal with this situation.
Delegates in the audience that may have another view, may have a different view? Or do you think whatever is said actually reflects the real situation in the sub-degree sector? Yes, sir.
I think students in general would like to finish their degree in 4 years on the basis of 2+2. Unless the articulation pathways have they work out very efficiently and also effectively. Otherwise, some students are going to take more than 2 years of practice in order to graduate in 4 years' time in total. I think in theory 2 + 2 is possible, but some students would like to have exchange. They would like to have international exposure tours. So for those students who are very keen to embark on those enriching experiences, they may not be able to do 2 + 2 and finish the degree in 4 years. So if we see 4-year degree programs as a very good, provide a very good opportunity for students to be a whole person, and I would think that we need to think on the course on how we could provide those stronger students with opportunities so that they can finish in 4 years' time with a degree on the basis of 2 + 2 plus limited opportunities of exposure overseas. That's something which I think where both the sub-degree sector and the degree sector have to work together.
Thanks very much, Simon. Now, will you have another response? Excuse me.
Thank you very much. I'm looking at the first question here about the value. Okay, so when we talk about value, I think we have to address all the stakeholders. I'm glad that one of the delegates mentioned that the role of parents is very important, especially when we consider the sub-degree students. They just left high school. Their parents still play a very important role in their decision making. And if they're studying a subject which they think is quite useless, and they may complain to their parents. Okay, if their parents can explain very well to them that, okay, this is a very important subject. Because I was fortunate enough to have watched the movie called The Backward Society. One particular sentence I remember very vividly is that science, engineering, and technology, they sustain life. Okay? But literature, arts, music, that's what we live for. Okay? So I think this is very important that we have to educate the parents as well. But I know it's easier said than done. Okay? But at least we have to keep this in mind. Okay? We want the students to take it very seriously. Okay? About the level that the question you just asked, when is a good time to teach them the GE? Is given the reality that the students of degrees, they have their very important minds of getting back or getting a degree places, preferably senior year places. They prefer to have something that is purely black and white. Okay, so I appreciate everything Professor Paul talked about this morning about creating weaker students. But if you give them an open book question scenario in examination in which there's no clear answers, they are not going to be happy. Okay, they want everything to be clear cut. Because the exam results was released for our school was released this Tuesday, and I go into the secrets group for our school, and I saw a lot of comments questioning how come my grade was so bad. Okay, they may would like to take a look at it, marking scheme, etc., etc. So, if you ask me, okay, given the realities of today, I think the best time to implement it would be in this final 2 years, let's say year 3 and year 4 in the 4-year curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all these responses. From what we gather, the first characteristics is a 2x2 system. The majority of the sub-degree students actually they want to articulate to a degree senior year place. So they look for academic results. The second point is the student's preference. The third is the parent's mindset. Now, our local scenario may be quite different from overseas. So I'd like to invite Paul and Linda and other panels to comment on that very specific scenario. So Linda.
I'll try this first, and with your permission, it really goes into question number 2 as well,
Sure.
if that's possible. One of the examples that I would share is interdisciplinary studies can be a great way to infuse general education into other courses. And actually we have faculty who talk about stealth general education, that students may not even realize that they're studying GE at the same time that they're studying their courses. So 2 quick examples I would give you. One is a collaboration with anthropology, criminal justice, English, and theater faculty who, for a semester, shared a course, and students were able to sign up on, whatever discipline they wished to for this particular course, based on a problem to solve. And they used the television show CSI, the crime scene investigation. I don't know if you all are familiar with that, but actually had a problem of solving a crime from an anthropology point of view, from a criminal justice point of view. In fact, they also included paralegal students. And so through that problem solving together from these different disciplinary points of view, they were able to really be quite successful. A second quick example would be in emergency medical services, students who are learning to be emergency medical technicians and paramedics, working in simulation studios with street scenes and ambulances, also working with film students who would film their activities, doing debriefs together, having those debriefs of what occurred with the particular accident scene and what the students were able to do in their response, written up by students in English classes. All of these coming together really helped them to learn the problem-solving skills and working together, even with simulations that involve medical students from the medical school at the University of Colorado coming to the community college. Those are ways that I think you can address that feeling of why do I have to study, fill in the blank, history or whatever, the general education courses, and actually infusing all of the curricula with those different capabilities for students.
Very much, Linda. Or I can invite Edward first, because Edward will need to leave us.
Maybe I can say,
So there's first specific scenario, the 2+2, the students and also the parent Sims is not very in support of general education, or at least along this direction.
The first question is, how could you convince the sub-degree students, having only 2 years? Everybody wants to articulate, especially articulating to a UGC-funded institution. I think the best way to do it, our experience meaning the Hong Kong U-Space Community College, is to work with universities. Because all universities require general education anyway. So if you convince them, those credits can be transferred. Then the incentive will be high. Everything is incentive. So now, I think many of our community college graduates, when articulated to the Hong Kong U, they get, exemptions. Otherwise, they have to take and make up general education, degrees or the programs. I think best way, therefore, I'm still saying the sector, the sub-degree sector has to come to some common stance, and they have to negotiate with the degree granting institutions, particularly the UGC-funded institutions, right, to accept a certain standard of transfer. Now we're doing it quite well because students are highly motivated to do general education programs, because they know that counts on the one hand into the final results, and secondly could be exempted from the general education requirements of the university. So you have to negotiate, but individual negotiation is also good, as in trade. Multilateral trading arrangement is better than bilateral, trading arrangements anyway. So the same principle applies. This is the first one. The second question is very simple. How could you convince students and parents whether, specialization, just, hard sciences, etc., would certainly, or finance or economics would give you a better living, which is not true. I think the only way you could convince them, my way, is to give them concrete example and figures. So usually when I have my roadshow, in a sense these days, going to secondary schools, my way is to show the famous people in history, what kind of background, actually major. And at one time I was asked to write the pathways for an investment book. So I tried to dig up the greatest investors in the post-second, Second World War era. To your surprise, the 10 greatest investors, in the past 50 years, only 10% major in economics or finance or business. The rest is classics, history, chemistry. This is a concrete example to tell you of my Lingnan students, one was a great investor, now a very successful fund manager. Her major was translation. Right? Those who major in finance did not do so well. So you must understand, this, you have to give them. And then another example I try to give these days, I have a list of all these people, and Obama is coming, Occidental, Hillary Clinton is coming from Wellesley, all these kind of examples you call them. But one more concrete statistic is to tell them how much they earn. When they start graduated through, professional majors earn a bit more. In the US these days, maybe about $50,000 a year. But after 10 years, look at it. Liberal studies, liberal arts, base, or health-based graduates earn much more than those professionals after 10 years. Of course, by certain percentage, by and large. I think after 10 years, they earn, my figure, if I'm correct, it's 130. So it's about something like 3 times, their starting salary, while all the professionals and science-based, could not match. So these are concrete examples you try to show them. But I think something which you can really do is to talk to the UGC-funded universities, how they would recognize all the GE, credits, so that they will give your students a high incentive. They will be highly motivated, to do your GE, courses.
Thank you very much. Any panel member who want to add?
I could talk about this.
Yes, sorry, I forgot.
No. I think it's wise. So watch your clock. Okay, because I could do this.
We still have another hour.
Okay, I could do this for an hour and a half. No. Implicit. There's a couple different ways to think about this. Let's think about it on a biological level. Okay, on the one hand, we have the fact of resistance. Here's what we also know on a biological level, is that the brain of an 18 to 22-year-old is very, very malleable. So one way to think about this is, yes, they may be resisting. They come in, they have these societal expectations imposed upon them, but they are more capable of changing their minds than anybody else. The key is that we have to engage a rhetoric that's effective with them. It's not enough to simply say, this is good for you. That's not going to work because they're 18 to 22 and it doesn't work. It is effective to tell them stories because narrative engages their emotions, it gives them images, and those are very powerful. It's very effective to engage them in particular pedagogies that are very effective. I'll be frank, the further I've come along with my thinking in general education, the less and less I care about emphasizing 2 of the sciences, 2 of the social sciences, 2 of the arts and humanities. The more I care about the things that we know work, high impact practices, internships, study abroad, capstone courses. We know those work because they engage students in meaningful ways, and that meaningfulness of the course is not told to them. They feel it, they live it. And in my mind, that's what we have to do. And I just want to contrast this too. I hear stories from my students about them stepping into classes and having the instructor on the first day do this. Here's your syllabus, and then we'll go through the syllabus. I know that a lot of you don't want to be here. I'm going to try to make it as painless as possible. And then they dismiss them. And then the instructor can't understand why the students don't like their classes. My mic dropped. That was good though.
Yes.
I guess I'd like to follow up on that question and sort of lead into the second question about pedagogy. I've only been in Hong Kong for 2 years, so I don't claim to be an expert about anything that goes on here. But I would like to tell a story, about my experience teaching a service learning course. I teach a course about ecology and environmental science, and I had Lingnan University students working with primary students. So my students developed lessons and taught them to the primary students. We worked with 3 schools. 2 of them were traditional government schools, and 1 school is called the RTG Gaia School in Tuen Mun. It's a non-traditional school, basically organized by a Chinese hippie. It focuses very much on learning about nature In their very first statement on the website, they say, we value learning opportunities over learning goals. And in that school, if the students are not interested in what's happening, they are totally permitted to just walk away. And so we turn our students into this environment, and these students can be naughty and difficult to work with, but when they were engaged, they engaged 100%. And so as part of service learning, reflection is a very important part of this. And I just got through reading the reflections from our recent term. One group worked with the school, I think, thought they had a rough time. But what they repeatedly said over and over about these students is, these students, unlike us who went through traditional school, they're so creative. And our students were starting to feel like, they use terms like exam machines, and that their experience had been examination machines. They felt like the joy of learning was taken out of them. And so when they were able to do unique learning pedagogies with the students, taking them on field trips, when I started teaching at Lingnan, people said, the students here are going to be very passive. They're just going to sit in the class and not going to do anything. And we haven't found that's the case, that when you give them an interesting opportunity, they jump in. At first they look a little surprised. Do you really want me to get up and dance around like I'm an earthquake? And the answer is yes, I do. And I think that what that says is, and what this has really jolted me in this experience just in the last couple of weeks, is general education courses are the time we have the opportunity to apply these pedagogies, because we're making them take these classes. They should be the best classes they ever take. And as an instructor in a general education course, I'm freed from the need to prepare them for the next course, which prepares them for the next course. So it really doesn't matter exactly what I teach them about the environmental science. It doesn't matter what I teach them about natural disasters, but we should be giving them memorable experiences. Memorable experiences. I've been thinking back on my general education courses I took at University of California, Santa Barbara, many, many years ago. And I have some very strong memories, but they weren't from just someone giving a boring lecture in a class. It was in a student when they had some sort of a bold pedagogy. So I think general education is open, both at the sub-degree level and at the degree granting institutions, to try these interesting pedagogies. And that will take it away from we're just doing another boring class into showing how they really can use these classes to make a difference. So I think we have a great opportunity, and I've seen that the Hong Kong students are very ready to jump into this, so we should give them an opportunity if we can.
Thank you very much. It's very encouraging. And what Paul said, and then Mark said, then we know teaching a general education course would be different from a discipline course that might require more in-depth way of thinking, experiential, different pedagogical approaches and all that. Now, I want to show it again back to the floor, that when we talk about all these very good things about learning experiences of our students, enhancement and all that, but then the dollar sign. Majority of the sub-degree sector institutions are self-financed. Now, if all these are good things, the question to you is the resource available to teachers and also to institutions? If we just follow what Paul said, I think that's a very good scenario, that youngsters, 18 years old, 19 years old, those are the years that they might be benefit a lot more from general education, because they are under that situation of exploration and get into excitement and all this. So I want to throw it to you is the resource available to you? If we say in the future the 2+2 model, UGC universities are not going to do any general education for senior year students, we just rely on. You may say, oh, fine, we have a lot of money. Okay, so yes.
Thank you. I guess there's a resource aspect to my question, but let me ask and say, is the idea of a capstone experience part of GE? And in that case, it's not just what comes before and later you do the major. That in fact GE is something that travels alongside working on the major. And that there's a unique benefit that occurs. Maybe it's after 2 years at the end of the associate's degree, there is some kind of integrative experience. And that creates an opening to design something rather unique. Maybe there's something at the end of 4 years. I don't know what is the state of capstone course design and delivery in Hong Kong, whether it be university or sub-degree, but I always thought capstone was some kind of part of GE. I may be wrong, but I wonder what the responses are on this.
It's just a very quick response. It might not be true for all institutions. For capstone projects, or capstone is part of GE curriculum. And then most probably it occurs in the 3rd and 4th year. So it's not very common to happen from year 1 and then through all these 4 years. It might not be ideal, but
no, it's not continuous, but I think it's in the sense at the end of some cycle.
Yeah.
That there is the challenge to integrate and then move towards what's next.
Yeah.
And that is another function of GE.
Yes.
But I don't know where it happens.
Yeah.
So I'm just adding the complexity to your...
Now it happens to the degree, the 4-year degree or the 2-year, 3rd and 4th year that complete the capstone activity or capstone projects. That might not be the best, but that's actually what's happening. So, but I agree with you. Capstone is best to start with year 1 and then carry on year 2, year 3, year 4. So according to what you said, then maybe we need to have a model of 0.5 GE at the sub-degree, and then 0.5 GE at the graduate and at the degree level, and then to add it up into 1.0. So anyhow, that adds the complexity. Okay, but I want to show this because that's our 5th question, which is asking about the resource. Whatever we just said is all good, but then where does the resource come from? And actually Edward, during the break, he told me that at the time when he negotiated with UGC, he asked UGC, we don't want more students, but you cannot change the unit cost for our students. So what, in his term, resource to support GE education is very important, because we cannot, just because we don't have the resource, we need to cut down the benefit that students can get from GE education. So,
if I could just add on to the idea, one of the things that I would preface my remark with the following comment, and that is the system that has been introduced in Hong Kong, although it's new, it is very rigid. And that has created a great deal of resentment on the part of the students who come into institutions thinking that they can go ahead and take things that they would like to take, and yet we push them into certain directions. We have taken that into account. The latest revisions that we are making to our general education is we have listened to the students to say, what is it that they want? The biggest comment was, I don't see any connection of general education with my courses in my major. So what we have done is we have created a foundation level courses that are required of all of the students, but they're not too large a number. And then we have created these themes that follow those courses in the foundation. Each of those themes are tied directly to the majors, whatever the student's interest may be. Previously, we were not allowing them to take anything other than you must take the core and you must take the distribution. We have done away with the distribution altogether, and we have introduced a capstone project, which is, again, a culminating experience for the students to be able to put it together. The question in terms of the resources is that our Vice President for Teaching and Learning says that in order to be able to do the piece that ties with the capstone project, in this case, independent study, service learning project, any of those things will contribute to satisfying the requirements for the capstone. he's creating and he's saying that he's going to put the resources in there. And then in addition to that, the biggest problem that we had was a concern that is capstone replacing the honors project? And some of the resentment that came from the faculty was, don't tell me now. Now I have to do two things, one for GE and another one for my own major. And so we are suggesting to them, no, it is not that. As a matter of fact, we are even going as far as to say that you can do a group project by going to Cambodia or to China or any place else where you have done some work that is experiential learning. You come back and you write your report and tell us exactly what was the experience all about. We will give you credit for that. Again, the idea is to tie the basis of GE to the overall impact of GE and how it's going to go ahead and make the student become more aware of the fact that GE is not a subsidiary to all of the other things, but rather it's a counterpart to the courses in the major.
May I? Yeah, maybe let me come back to this 2+2 issues. I think from my personal experience, 2+2, the obstacle of 2+2 might not be in GE, might be in the major programs. Because we take the 2 years in the sub-degree as more like 1 year in GE and 1 year in major. Because we don't have this GE related major study. We only have like a S&T area. So I think the sub-degree, the specialist sub-degree, the course mapping might not be so similarly connected to the degree programs, especially in the major programs. So I think the cut down in the major program credit transfer might be an obstacle to this 2+2 model.
I'd just be interested in resources for you as teachers and administrators. What does that look like beyond the question of money, which is always essential? And our GE program is looped into the financing of the whole 10 faculties, and so there's an inseparable loop between money, GE, and the faculties. That's very lovely. But I'd be curious, what would you most like, what would most excite you in terms of resources for your pedagogical experiments and curriculum design? If anybody just has any quick thoughts. If you have non-quick thoughts, we can talk about that later also.
Yes, there's one.
We are talking about GE as a part of every program, and sometimes when I come across some students, no matter in sub-degree or degree, they do not have made up their mind in their career yet. They would like to have more general education in order to choose from. So in fact, I've come across that there is degree in the general studies. And there is also thinking in my mind that why not there is some, because it is credit bearing, isn't it? So if it is credit bearing, in some cases, we can think out of the box that general education subjects can accumulate up to a degree. So instead of binding from the major as just the speaker has mentioned, so in fact in OU we have degree in general studies, but it is not face-to-face, but it is online. So what I'm thinking is that would that be a direction that for for GE can be a degree program or sub-degree program, high diploma program on its own. Yeah.
The Associate of Arts degree, as well as the Associate of Science degree in the United States, both of those are basically general education degrees. particularly the Associate of Arts, and both of those are designed for transfer. Now, it's important to be sure that students are following the prescribed program, and it's not so prescribed within the Associate of Arts and Associate of Science that they have no choices at all. There are some choices, but nevertheless, it's a prescribed program designed for transfer, and particularly for students who are undecided.
Thank you. Any other response? Now, because of time, I want to put a little bit of time discussing about number 4, the question number 4. Now, it seems that we have no choice but do that articulation. So what would be a good strategy that panel members could suggest to our sub-degree providers that we can make a one step forward, and because of the differences, because of the different way of thinking, because of cross system, we know all these obstacles. So I think it's time for us to think about a solution. What can we do in the near future that we can bridge the gap? We can start bridging it. Now, people talking about, let's talk about it. Let's gather and then talk. Let's improve communication. But improving communication, would it be the solution? The reason is because there are a lot of differences. Curriculum design, pedagogical approaches, and beliefs about general education system and all that. So I'd like to invite panel members to just shed light on this issue. So start. Okay.
Very briefly, Reza mentioned these block transfers. That's been a huge help from our side. Students get a lot of credit coming out of the sub-degree sector, and they have to do a couple of courses at HKU, which are valuable for many different reasons. And I understand what you're saying about talking, but talking would be good to just learn more. It's a very complicated system. But I think the block transfer has been one solution from our side that's worked quite well.
Is that your experience? Block transfer? Would it be more, is point to point? That is the Hong Kong U subsidiary with Hong Kong U and Poly U subsidiary with Poly U? Or actually it's across sector? So Simon.
Yeah, I think block credit transfer is more efficient and also more effective. It also realizes the beauty of providing general education. Subject by subject may not be the way to go. Otherwise, students would be too assessment focused. They would put less emphasis to the learning process, and they would pursue achieving better grades in submitting exams, submitting assignments, and trying to perform better in exam and test. And they would less enjoy the learning process by interacting with the teachers, interacting among the classmates. So I think, all in all, I think block credit transfer is preferred to individual subject by subject transfer. Yeah.
How could we do block transfer?
The way we have done it is that there are certain courses that students are taking at the sub-degree program, and that is English, Chinese, mathematics. Those are general knowledge based, and it's very easy to go ahead and accept those as a way of looking at the block as a whole. We also have, on the side of the block, we always tell our students who come into us, you are getting 27 credits, exempted based on your courses that you have taken. But if you believe that there are other courses in GE that you took, but our AR has not approved it, come to us and we will be more than happy to. We in fact have that information on our web pages, trying to go ahead and make sure that our students will come to us, and they do. They bring in their course syllabus, and we take a look at it and say, yes, this is one, probably was not given, so we'll go ahead and then we inform the AR that. So that process itself also alleviated some of the cumbersome nature of one by one, as someone was suggesting.
I have one caution about block transfer. There's an assumption that whatever the student take at their sub-degree level, that they will be able to just take whatever that they want to take. So after they finish the requirement, but most probably those subjects are subjects that they wanted to take, and then they fulfill their general education, not requirement, but their general education endeavor. And then with that, they become satisfied, and then block transfer. So once when they get to the degree sector, the third, fourth year, they don't need to take general education. But then there could be students who the general education at sub-degree sector actually cannot fulfill their general education needs, but then they still need to fulfill this requirement. So after that block transfer, then there's no chance for them to take general education subjects again. So what it means is there's a gap in terms of because of the block transfer, they want to take, but they don't have the opportunity to take. So the question to sub-degree sector is, do you think in your institution you will be able to provide the students with all the options in terms of general education? Just for example, in our university, the general education subjects is about 100 subjects for students to take. Now, smaller institution, you may not have that number of subjects options for students to take. So, what then would be the solution? Just a crazy idea. Could the sub-degree sector, could you just put up common GE subjects so that students can just cross the border and take? Could you just gather yourself to put up 100 subjects so that students can just take whatever they want? And with that, can we just put our student in a better position when they do this block transfer, that they really don't need to take any general education subject at the time when they are in the third and the fourth year? So I just want to show this to you, and also I invite panel members to just see whether you have any ideas on this.
We have 6 additional credits of electives for GE. So in order to be able to, if we have already transferred the block, and then there are some courses in GE at our institution that the student would like to go ahead and take, in addition to the 11 credits that we do require them to take, it's a possibility for them to go ahead and have that choice. And one of the nicest thing about the block for us was when we started so early with Simon's initiative, was that we received lots of courses that were coming in from all of the different community colleges. And it came to my office, and I had to go take a look at each of these in terms of the content to see exactly whether it was comparable rather than being exactly the same. To satisfy the English, to satisfy the math, and to satisfy the Chinese or any other area courses that were there. We do have that in our database, and we have been asking our colleagues at the sub-degree programs that could you please send us additional, if you have updated information and things that you're asking, to take a look at it and see if there's a possibility of, again, facilitating as much as we possibly can your students who are coming to us. So that additional credits, the 6 credits of electives, makes it possible for students to go ahead and take courses that they didn't have a chance to take, but now they can take it.
Linda and I had a conversation a little bit about this earlier. I think the temptation always, and this is sort of following up on Fraser's comment as well, about sort of not, what you said, not the same, but similar or comparable. Yeah. And I think our tendency in these conversations is always to think about what do they need to know. They need to know the dates of this. They need to know who came up with this idea. They need to know this theory. They need to know this algorithm. And that's a very reasonable conversation to have. But really, the more important conversation is
a variety of choices at the university level. And I do think that there is a reality for some students that if you look at the perspective of providing opportunity to some students who perhaps wouldn't have the opportunity otherwise, that we have to be careful that the fact that we may be offering something that is a little bit more narrow may be a fine trade-off for the fact that we are broadening the opportunity for more people to have the education.
Thank you very much, Linda. I want to close this session. Actually, before the session, Simon mentioned to me, when compared with a few years ago, actually the gap between the sub-degree sector and degree sector has been closer now. Although there's still gap, but we can see there's a good progress that pull the two sectors together. And then as educator, actually mentioned by Edward for a few times, I think it is our role just try our best, whatever it takes, to bridge the gap, because that really not fair to the student, jeopardizing their learning opportunity, and also adding additional load, their workload, between when they transfer from one sector to another sector. So I hope with today's discussion and also our panel members' comments will be able to shed some light on the questions that you might have. But more importantly, I think something more at the system level that we need to do things. For example, the self-financed sub-degree sector institutions might want to gather together and then get to a more unified approach in terms of general education, whereas the UGC sector institutions should also get together and then talk about this. And it might not be the content, but more is the system itself. So once when we have a little bit more converging system, then when we bridge the two, then it might be even easier. So I hope that you enjoyed your time of today's seminar, and I'd like to thank all the panel members. Thank you for your time. And of course, I want to thank you for staying behind